Hello, our lovely audience. This is producer Violet, and I'm just letting you know that um, we kind of do this podcast anywhere, any way we kind of can. So we're still figuring out how to do better sound and everything. So this episode is going to be very quiet. So just turn up your headphones and the volume. Um, We'll be doing better next week. I'm not even entirely sure what happened so that the volume was so quiet, but yeah, please be patient as we're still trying to figure this out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of the Catholic Cinema Crusade podcast. I'm Nick Olzik, and I'm here today with a special guest, my producer and editor, Violet. And today we're going to go through 2023 in film and both of our picks for the 10 best movies of the year. So stick around.
Okay, we're recording again.
Hello, and welcome to episode 15 of the Catholic Cinema Crusade podcast. It's January 1st, 2024. And today I have a special guest, my wife Violet, who will be also giving her takes for the top 10 movies of the year. We'll have kind of a nice meandering discussion, look back at kind of the year of 2023. We'll both give our picks for the top 10 films. And we'll also talk about some of the films we didn't get to see, but hopefully we'll see soon. All right, so first, just a little bit about the year in general. So in 2023, we saw a lot of different trends. Probably the biggest, again, and this is part of an overarching trend that's been really going on for the last decade, but it's the rise of streaming. I would say actually most of the films that I see, whether it's reviewing or just watching casually, are not the theater, but at streaming. And I can't even count how many times I hear about a film or I see a trailer and I think, wow, it's really good. I can't wait till it comes on Netflix or Amazon Prime or something else so I can catch it, especially with a family of five. It's just really hard to get to the theater. Fortunately, both of us were able to get to theater a little bit, but not as much as I like. As far as some other trends this year, we're still kind of coming out of the crisis of 2020 when theaters really saw a lot of people leave. We're starting to see more and more people come back. Probably the best example of this was the Barbenheimer, uh, phenomena of the summer, where you had Barbie and Oppenheimer, these two very different films come out in the same weekend, but become extremely popular. You saw the Super Mario Brothers becoming the highest grossing animated film ever. Just a lot of really good, positive directions for film as well. You also saw some negative directions. Probably the biggest thing that was really sad for me was to watch the continued downfall of the Disney Corporation. They've had a lot of hits, whether it's with the MCU or with their animated films. Of course, back in the spring, they had a major controversy regarding some leaked footage of some of their committee meetings where they talked about LGBT issues and racial issues in films that they were planning that to put it mildly, did not go over very well. And unfortunately, because of these larger issues and just because of poor storytelling and different things, we saw the lowest grossing MCU film to date since 2008 with The Marvels. You've seen flop after flop as far as films. So Wish was supposed to be their big 100th year anniversary film. It did very poorly. Even Pixar's really struggled in some ways with some of their films. But like always, there's always good stuff to talk about, and that's mostly what we're here to do. Okay. Was there any other trends, Violet, that you can think of that were interesting to you this past year in film?
Was that leaked footage this year or last year?
I thought it was in the spring.
Maybe it
I'm pretty
was,
sure it was in the spring.
but well, um, I mean, for me, a big thing was Doctor Who, you know, but continuing kind of on the themes you're saying, and now they're like, the fans are telling the producers, we don't like this, make it better. And they say, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And the fans are like, Okay then.
Yeah,
Peace
the
out.
Doctor Who 60th was an interesting example of that because, you had in between, so there were, the three specials. The second special I thought was actually like classic great Doctor Who. It was
Yeah.
really good. It had a great villain. It was an interesting plot. It was self-contained. And then you just had these bookends of these really, really weak episodes in the first and third entry. So yeah, that was kind of unfortunate. Let's talk about some good stuff. So I'm going to start with my number 10, and then Violet will do her number 10. We'll kind of compare them or say, this is on the list, but maybe later. So my number 10 was Freud's Last Session. This was probably the latest film I saw. I saw this in mid-December.
Oh, aside from Wonka.
Right, aside from Wonka, that's a good point. Um, and Freud's Last Session is a really interesting film. It's a very minimal film, so it's essentially a 2 hour conversation based on a really small premise. So Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalyst of note, in his last few years had escaped Central Europe at the rise of the Nazis and was living at a townhouse in London. And like many intellectuals of the day, who didn't really have much to do, he basically would just have kind of intelligentsia over at his house, politicians, artists, revolutionaries, etc., and just talk to them. And there's a small note in a log that said one afternoon he had, quote, a young Oxford professor over for an afternoon of light conversation. And so this film is based around the idea of we don't really know who that Oxford professor was, but we're going to pretend that this is C.S. Lewis, who would have been a young Oxford professor at the time. He had recently had his conversion to Christianity in the early 30s. He had his first main Christian apologetics book, Pilgrim's Regress, out right before that. And in this book, if you read it, he does criticize a lot of Freud's ideas, so it would not be totally out of the realm of possibility that the two of these met and talked. So this film is basically a 2 hour conversation between these two titans of the 20th century. And it's just a gorgeous film. This beautiful back and forth. It's played by Anthony Hopkins as Freud and Michael Goode as Lewis, and they're both actors at the top of their game. I'm particularly fond of Hopkins in anything that he does.
I just love watching him perform.
Oh,
I
he's
just love,
so good.
so captivated by his performance, that whole movie.
Right. And, it's really interesting. So, of course, they have their back and forth about ideas. They talk about the existence of God. That's kind of what gets them started. But then also, what's the point of living? What's the human soul? They talk about civilization. They talk about politics. They talk about sexuality. They talk about anything under the sun. And it's just great to hear the two of them go at it. But what really struck me about the film and why I really loved it was despite all this talk, what really kind of matters is their actions. You have Lewis, who seems, whether he wins the argument or doesn't, is very poised, very humble, is generous in his thinking. Whereas Freud, in his last years, is drug addicted. He seems very arrogant, very hypocritical. And, there's this subplot involving his daughter who he says, he's helping out, but at the same time, she's really providing for his drug addiction. He's contemplating suicide. I mean, he's just got a really rough life. And if you judge by their fruits, it's very clear that Lewis kind of comes out on top in this kind of battle of the wits, which is kind of undermined a little bit at the end when they have kind of the end credit sequence that talks about what each of them did, and it goes out of their way to praise both Freud and his daughter, while kind of leaving Lewis almost as a footnote saying, oh, he helped out a lot of, children refugees during the Blitz, neglecting that he was one of the great Christian apologists of all time, which is probably why it's a few lower on the list, just because of a kind of disappointing ending, but overall really good. So what was your number 10, Violet?
My number 10 was The Pope's Exorcist, all the way back in the spring. Um, it's, what is the priest's name?
Father Amorth.
Father,
Amorth, Amorth.
oh, yeah, Amorth. Um, he, he's passed away at this point, but
Yeah, he just died a
he
few
was
years ago.
the exorcist for the Vatican
Mhm.
for decades. And I know you didn't like this movie as much as I did, but I was really captivated, and the suspense was really good. And I know you didn't like the ending, but I loved the ending. I
I
thought it was fantastic.
I like the ending. I just thought the climax was really silly, and the whole subplot
Well,
of
yeah,
the. I
and
mean, yes, yes, yes.
um,
But I like the kind of we're getting an Avengers team to go
yeah,
out and attack the demons all over the world. That was
that
kind
would
of
be
fun.
so. I'm so excited for that. Like, let's go out and let's just kill all, take out all the demons around the world. Like, yeah, this is what the new Avengers should be: is a priest, his buddy, and slaying demons. So I thought the characters were really good and the acting was really good, and it wasn't the best movie of the year, but I really enjoyed the theme, and I honestly did really think that the silly climax was a lot of fun to watch. And I'm okay with a kind of silly thing like that because I got the impression that the movie makers were thought it was silly too, so they were like really playing into it and like kind of being over the top with it on purpose.
Hmm.
So it's not like the Nun 2 where they were like trying to be serious and
Right,
it was silly. It
right.
was just silly, and so that made it fun.
No, that's
And
true.
so I actually really enjoyed that, and it kind of was a nice like contrast to all the like suspense and everything and the fear that was came before it. And it just I don't know, it was just an interesting idea, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, but yeah, not even on my honorable mentions. I just thought it was really silly. But the true story of Father Morth, if you don't know him, yeah, he was the chief exorcist for the Diocese of Rome for like 30 years, like a really long time, primarily during John Paul II's pontificate, and he wrote a bunch of memoirs of his experiences, and those books are really
Yeah,
good
they are really good,
if you ever get
very
a chance.
insightful.
All right, number nine.
Oh, we got the same one.
Yes. Oh, is that number nine? Oh, number nine with the same one, which is Violet.
Lady Ballers.
Okay.
Woo!
So what was so interesting about this was Daily Wire. So the conservative news conglomerate, Daily Wire, had been hinting for like months and months, probably all the way back to the spring, that they had
Yeah.
some big project that they were putting together that they kind of alluded to, but no one really talked about. And then, like a week before the movie came out, they dropped the trailer. They just completely out of the blue dropped the trailer for this film called Lady Ballers on like a Monday, and they said on Friday this film is coming out. And oh my goodness, so I'll just very as kind of nonchalantly as I can lay out the plot. So it stars Coach Rob, played by Jeremy Boring, who's the real CEO of Daily Wire, and he's also the writer director of the film. He is kind of a has-been basketball coach. He used to coach high school basketball and had very successful championship teams, but now he's a little bit older. All his best players and students have moved on to car dealerships and insurance salesmen, all kinds of silly things. And he's teaching at the local Y. He's divorced. He has a kid he's trying to take care of, a young girl, and his life's just not going very well. Okay, and he's facing all these problems, particularly as he's kind of a low level, you know middle of the road, moderate kind of guy, and society is going crazy and is starting to become more and more progressive, and he doesn't really know what to do about it. And he meets up with an old teammate because he gets fired from his job for making a inappropriate comment, and he meets up with an old teammate, and they
It's not
basically
actually inappropriate.
well, okay, but he's fired for a comment deemed inappropriate. I'll put it that way.
Even though it's
And
the truth.
he meets up. He's doesn't have a job, trying to find a job, so he ends up getting a job as a waiter at basically a LGBT Hooters knockoff. So this is like a traditional bikini style restaurant, except all the servers are men dressed as women with very elaborate female clothing. And he meets one of his former players there, who asks him to train him from this upcoming, match, a race basically. And he needs the extra cash. I mean, he's already working this job, but now he has another job. And so he's helping this former student race. And when they get to the race, okay, so this is a guy, but he forgets to take off like some of his clothing from this restaurant that he works at. And so they automatically assume that he's a trans woman. And so they put him accidentally in the race for women rather than for men. And he totally blows the competition out of the water and he wins $5,000. So both the coach and his former student kind of get this idea, hey, let's get back together. The old teammates, the old high school students who are now out of high school, will make a trans woman basketball team compete against biological women and will win match after match after match. There's kind of this fake version of the Olympics they're training for called like the championship games or something. But that's basically the idea, is that they're going to create a team of men to compete against women, since that's now part of society. And as you can imagine, this leads to all kinds of hilarious hijinks and weird situations and um, awkward kind of confrontations. And it's gross, it's bizarre, it's poignant, it's timing, but above all, it's just really, really funny in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. The one film that kept coming to mind when I was watching this was Tropic Thunder. That was the last film that was kind of this take no prisoners approach to comedy. We're just going to be not necessarily even trying to be offensive, but just not caring what people think and just going for the darkest, most insane humor possible. Mel Brooks, especially in the 60s and 70s, was really good at this. If you watch the original Producers, where they have Springtime for Hitler as like a product. Yeah. The important thing to remember that is that film was made in 1969, less than 30 years after World War II. That's roughly the same time frame if you were to make a musical about like the 9/11 hijackers.
That's a good point.
It's just so far beyond good taste that you can possibly imagine. It was awful. Okay. But again, it's done very much as a way not to, support evil, but as a way to trying to point out idiosyncrasies in societies you know, and the Daily Wire, it's no secret, has really been on the front lines of, questioning gender ideology and being part of a larger movement to kind of bring, traditional values back to marriage and to society and that sort of thing. But here they're doing it in a very direct, comedic sort of fashion, and it just works. It's just really funny. It's very poignant. It makes a lot of good points. And then there's a second layer where if you know the Daily Wire, if you know the personalities behind it, they're kind of big podcasters, the producers, etc. It's like this inside joke film for all of their fans where you just get all these little nuggets and Easter eggs, kind of like how when you watch Pixar films and there's like the Pizza Planet truck is over here, or a Finding Nemo doll shows up. Like there's just all these little things. First of all, everybody in the film, from top to bottom, director, writer, actor, extra, etc., pretty much all of them work for the Daily Wire.
There's some professional actors.
Right.
There was like the journalist lady. She's a podcaster, but not with the Daily Wire. And then Alex, I think he was
the main
he's a
student.
Real professional actor.
Yeah, he was probably the best actor out of all of them. Yeah. So you could tell he was the one guy who did this for a living.
But most everybody else was like local to Tennessee or worked for the Daily Wire.
Right. So even just as kind of like when I go back and watch my old films that I made with like my friends in high school, it very much had that kind of feeling. It's like, oh, there's so and so. And oh, there's the little stuffed walrus. And oh, there's that baseball bat that showed up in one thing. Or oh, this is a fake commercial for Jeremy's Razors, And
that was a real commercial.
Well, I mean, it was a real commercial, but I mean, like in the context of the film.
Watching it, we went online. We're like, oh look,
I know, gosh. But it was just a ton of fun, and it like it felt so refreshing to watch a film that you just felt like could never, ever, ever get made, and then it gets made. And there's this weird joy in knowing that something like this could still happen, even if you disagree with a lot of the philosophical things that the Daily Wire stands for. I think just to have the gumption to do something like this and to try to be funny, and really this approach of comedy as we're making fun of the ridiculous, the classic idea of comedy that you're using it as kind of a way to point out something important in a digestible manner. It succeeded really well, better than I thought, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. When I was putting my list together, one of the movies I thought about that we also saw this year that I liked was Old Dads, and Bill Burr is fast becoming one of my favorite comedians. He's just blunt. He's hilarious. He tells the truth. And Old Dads, it's a good movie, and obviously it's better acted, has more money, more talent, but it wasn't as lighthearted or fun as Lady Ballers, and it wasn't as no holds bar as Lady Ballers, because like with Lady Ballers they touch the untouchable. Jeremy, when he was going around promoting the film, said that like there were people who were begging to do projects with us who would absolutely not touch it. And that's why he needed the people at the Daily Wire to
Right,
do it. It was out of necessity because nobody
right,
would do it because everybody knows they'll be blacklisted if they do this movie. And to all the people out there who claim this isn't real, that it's not really happening, Miss Riley Gaines, who had to stand next to a man holding her trophy while her trophy was in the mail. She's in the movie. So don't tell me this isn't happening when there's someone who watched a man take her trophy in the movie itself. So it was
right,
just so funny. I mean, like you said, just no holds bar, and like there's so many just awkward moments that naturally come out of the situation that they really highlighted that were just like you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so cringe, but so funny, but so true, but so it was just a really fun movie.
right.
Really recommend.
And the one last thing I just want to put as a little coda, um, is a lot of people, when I was reading kind of reviews for this, even people who normally, would agree with a lot of what they were trying to say, were saying, well, this film was too mean or it was mean spirited, these sorts of things. And this is a common criticism I see of the Daily Wire a lot, and that's patently not true. Okay, they're very direct in trying to point out the ridiculousness of this philosophy, but they're actually quite compassionate when it comes to the people who suffer, from, difficulties in their own sexuality, or, not being sure about, their background or things like that. I mean, as someone who has a lot of experience with younger people and who struggle with their sexual identity, and with, especially, it's hard to fault people living in a culture like this when they're told so many different conflicting things. I was actually, especially towards the end of the film, I don't want to spoil too much because it's really kind of nice. But in the end of the film, there's this point where you kind of realize there's a difference between attacking an ideology and attacking a person. And when it comes to the person, we want to be compassionate. We want to help those who are having difficulties. We want to be Christian in our approach because all of us are sinners, and nobody, and this is something that comes across in the film. These are not necessarily good people who are, they're as much at fault as many of the people they are trying to criticize. But nonetheless, it is important to be direct in one's criticism of a very destructive ideology, while still recognizing that people trapped in that ideology need our help and need our prayer and need our compassion. And that comes across too. It's not mean spirited, it's not out to negate even someone's experience. It's just to kind of show this is the reality of what's going on and you should pay attention. All right, number 8. So for number 8, I had Route 60, The Biblical Highway. This was a really small film that kind of went under the radar. It was in Fathom Events for a couple days, and then I know it was on a couple of Christian like cable channels
Oh,
like
okay.
CBN and things like that. And basically, it was, as the name implies, so the idea is that there's this main highway that runs through the nation of Israel called Route 60. It starts at the top where Nazareth and Galilee are, and it runs through the middle, and it goes through, Bethel and Jerusalem and down the south, across Bethlehem, and of course ends up at the border with Egypt. And so it's kind of a travelogue. It's like a lot of documentaries you've seen that kind of go through the Holy Land. They visit the sites, and they, of course, they're using 4K cameras, so it's really gorgeous, and you're seeing all these beautiful sites. Which, people like me, I've never been to the Holy Land, so it's really nice to see what it really looks like and to kind of experience that. But it's not just kind of a physical travel guide; it's also a travel guide in the sense of what these places mean. So the two people who are in charge, who are kind of our guides on this journey, are two people who used to work in the State Department. Okay, so the first is
Mike Pompeo.
Mike Pompeo, who was the Secretary of State under Donald Trump.
And
Okay,
basically the author of the Abraham Accords.
right, and he was one of the key people behind the Abraham Accords. And then the second, just want to make sure I get this name right here. Was David Friedman, who was a former ambassador to Israel from the United States. He's also a Orthodox rabbi. And so you have kind of a Protestant, Christian, Orthodox rabbi, both of whom have extensive political experience, in addition to the fact that they're religious people. And so as they're going through, they're actually talking a lot about what this land and the story of the Bible means for them as secular leaders. They're using the examples of Solomon, of David, of Jesus, of Moses, and kind of the lessons that can be gleaned from that, both positive and negative. So like David's a good example of this. He was very faithful in some aspects and thus was very successful in some of his efforts, but then he had his affair with Bathsheba, which led to all kind of civil war and strife within his own kingdom. And it was a really beautiful, not just look at the Holy Land, but then to kind of say, this is the basis for how, certainly in the West, we consider how to be good leaders, looking to the Bible and trying to find ways to make a peaceful world for everybody. Obviously, this was a great interfaith film between Jews and Christians. But as good as it was, so I saw this film in September, and I thought was great. I thought was really good. And then, of course, October 7th happened, and it was suddenly made the lessons of the film seem so much more real and so much more timely. The need for wise leadership, the need for level headed thinking, not, giving into lies or exaggerations or rash decisions because you hear some random thing happen and you immediately jump to this conclusion or that. Um, so it was both a really beautiful travelogue, but also a really great instructional film.
Yeah, I love that movie too. I think I told you my biggest criticism was, you had all these beautiful shots of all these old buildings and beautiful landscape, but I'd be like so enthralled, and then all of a sudden, I'd be looking at these two guys again. I'm like, no, go back to that other thing I was looking at. They keep talking, they keep talking. I don't go back and look at that
Right.
other thing. So that was so frustrating. I'm like, I'm fine with you guys talking. I like what you're saying, but can I look at? I'm not in the. I'm not. I don't know if I'm ever gonna go to the Holy Land. So this is my chance. I want to look at it. That was my
It did
biggest
go on a
criticism.
quick clip. That's very true. You were only in each town like a few minutes.
Well, like you said, even when you were there, you'd get like less than a minute shot of the whole place, and then you'd spend like 2 minutes staring at these two guys, or they'd be like pointing at something, and I'm just like, okay, can we slow down? I know you got lots to cover here, but maybe like 10 seconds on these guys, and then like 90 seconds on the rest of the place. We don't need to look at them the whole time they're talking.
All right. So what was your number 8, Violet?
Jesus Revolution. Um, my after we saw that movie, my mom said that she used to go to concerts
Oh,
at
neat.
that church, and so I think kind of one of the reasons that I really liked it is it's kind of personal because like it helped me get in the idea of like what the spiritual revival at that time was. That my parents were growing up, and that my parents were teenagers, and what because the church is going through it's another spiritual revival at the moment, and it looks very different than that
Hmm.
in a certain way. So I liked and the uh, I mean just all the characters, well, not all the
Right,
people,
people.
it was, but characters, all the characters were really good. And Jonathan Rumi again is just it's just
Just playing himself basically
yeah,
as Jesus again.
he just
He had a
he's
lot of
such a I don't know, yeah, it's such a good character, and um I love the dynamics of it, and then like the struggles, but the constantly turning to God, and I don't know, it's just like I said, it was one of the reasons it's Hira was like it was in a way personal to me because I
okay.
had some and it also gave me hope, because um it's like what's old is new again. History happens in cycles, and so it's like, well, okay, so you have all these, you know, uh, beatniks and druggies looking for God, and they found him, right? They found him, and so I'm like, well, okay, now we got all these problems going on, and so all these people are going to eventually come back and find God, and so it's I don't know, I liked it. It was a fun movie, and um,
Yeah, I liked Jesus Revolution a lot too. It was on my short list, so it made honorable mention. The performances were really good.
yeah,
The story was really good. I don't know. It just, especially compared to several of these films, I just feel like it didn't have enough oomph behind it, for lack of a better term.
I felt like there weren't very
Um,
many films this year that had that oomph,
yeah,
though.
yeah. I mean, it was an enjoyable film, and it was an interesting kind of slice of Christian history in the United States that I didn't really know about, and so I was really interested to learn about. So yeah, I liked it too. All right, number 7, I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I know you also really liked, so you can, you know, comment on it or hold off on your comments until later. Um, so we talked a little about the MCU at the beginning, and even though the MCU has had some rather poor entries lately, I still think there's a lot of life left in this series, and I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 kind of really demonstrated that. So, out of all the MCU films I saw, I thought this was the darkest, the saddest, maybe not the most intense, but certainly the one that kind of delved deepest into really dark areas. It was concerned mostly with Rocket, played by Bradley Cooper, kind of this raccoon like hybrid human creature, who's always been kind of snarky and the class clown of the group. He gets captured by this, or not, yeah, captured by this kind of other kind of weird organization. And we start to learn a lot about his past and where he came from and how he became. We always knew he was kind of an experiment of some kind, but now we really see it, and it's really dark. I don't want to give away too much, but basically how he came to be a raccoon humanoid. And of course, when he gets captured, the Guardians are going to go after him and try to rescue him. And there's a few little subplots within there, but basically it's about them trying to rescue their friend Rocket, which is really nice. It's just kind of a almost a Saving Private Ryan sort of narrative where they have to kind of go in. But the reason I really loved it was profoundly pro-life and profoundly anti-eugenics. The whole premise is that this villain is a who calls himself the High Evolutionary, basically wants to be God, wants to design creatures in his image, and he's obsessed with Rocket because Rocket broke his narrative. Rocket was able to do something that he didn't intend Rocket to do when he created Rocket. And then there's this backstory where Rocket basically, makes these friends who are other animal hybrid beings. And it's really, really sad to see them being experimented on. And it's clearly meant to be kind of this almost Holocaust kind of imagery where you have just all these animals in cages being experimented on. If the experiment doesn't turn out okay, they just kill the animal. But again, these are rational beings. These are not what we consider to be animals, which is why some people have analogized this to like animal testing of humans on animals. But again, these are all rational beings who talk, who have souls, who interact with one another. So I think it's more of a eugenics commentary. But it was really profound. It was really sad, but at the same time, very uplifting and very life affirming. Basically, that
Yeah.
what makes us human isn't how intelligent we are. It isn't this or that. It's our soul. It's our heart. It's the fact that we have dignity and purpose, and you shouldn't mess with that. And yet, and it's so funny to me because this narrative, like going all the way back to Frankenstein, The Island of Dr. Moreau, Brave New World, this narrative of don't play God, don't mess with God's creation. And yet we keep after making these movies over and over and over again because people just don't get the darn message that this is a bad idea. Whether it's Jurassic Park or it's, this or that, I feel like this is something we're never going to get out of as humanity.
Well, even like we've been watching David Tennant Doctor Who with the kids, right?
Yeah,
And like every couple episodes, I gotta point out to kids, look, what do you do? You're playing God,
yeah,
kids. You're
playing
like,
God never good,
right?
never works.
And he's like, oh, people keep playing God. I'm like, well, what was the first sin, Nikki?
Right.
What did the snake whisper to Eve? Playing God.
Yeah.
Um, my number 7 was Bird Box Barcelona. Um, so it's a sequel to a movie called Bird Box that came out. Both movies came out on Netflix, right?
Right. So Bird Box came out last year, and this was the
Yeah.
sequel.
And it's another one of these like thriller kind of monster movie things where, but you don't really know what the monsters are or if they're aliens or what's going on. But it's this post-apocalyptic world, and the reason it's called Bird Box is because the birds alert people to these monsters. And one of the reasons we don't know what they are is you can't look at them. If people look at them, then they do something to kill themselves. But they get like hypnotized or something, and we're not even really sure what happens. But so they can't look at these creatures. So they're constantly so they have the birds to alert them when a monster's around, and then they could put blindfolds on or cover their eyes. So Bird Box Barcelona is so the first Bird Box took place in the United States, and so this my understanding was it kind of took place in sometime after
Right.
the
Yeah. There
events of the
was
first movie, but in
but in
Barcelona.
Barcelona, yes, it's like I don't know exactly. I want to say like a year
Yeah,
later
like sometime after these creatures
because
first
yeah,
arrive.
people are more accumulated to living life in
Right.
this situation than they were in the first film, where they kind of had to figure everything out.
Yeah. And I really liked it. There ended up being a lot of like Sixth Sense kind of things to it, where it's like what you thought was going on wasn't what's going on, and we're still not sure what's going on. I know there's going to be more,
Yeah.
so I'm really excited to see them. But it was intense, um, and I liked the kind of like religious like dynamic of it, um, because the way they used it kind of gave us a new perspective of like it was another way to show us what these creatures are. Like, from the first movie, here's what we see about, here's what we know about the creatures. We get this kind of perspective, and then it's like, okay, now we're going to look at the creatures from this perspective, and like by the end of the movie, you're like really intrigued even more, and there was a happy ending in a sense, so you did get some relief. at the end. Um, and so I'm really excited to kind of keep going in the series and kind of get like another like perspective of these aliens or whatever they are. We're not even really sure,
We're not
but
even really sure. Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I really liked it too. It was a great, it was certainly like as a thriller, it was really fun. It was really interesting. The creature is one of the weirdest, coolest, strangest kind of villain creatures I've seen in
yeah,
a horror film. I liked it.
yeah.
All right. So number six goes all the way back to January. It's really, really hard. This is kind of a trope in end of the year awards sorts of things. It's really hard for an early film to do good. Like studios dump their films they don't think are going to win anything in like um, March or February or January. In fact, I'm pretty confident about this. The last film to win Best Picture that came out before the summer was Braveheart in 1995. It came out in May. So sometimes you get some like Memorial Day films that will do that, but like it's really rare. Most of like the big pictures come out in like November, December. So you have this film, A Man Called Otto, and this is based on one of the most famous Scandinavian novels of recent memory. About a decade ago, a book came out called A Man Called Ove, and then that was adapted into a Swedish film, which was nominated for the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. So this is both kind of an adaptation of the book and the Swedish film. Stars Tom Hanks as the main character, who of course is great in everything he does. And he's the classic example of like a lovable curmudgeon. He's lives on his own. He's kind of older. He's cranky. He's always barking at people around him. He always has, he's clearly mad about something in his life, but we're really not sure. But he's always complaining about everything. And gradually, we start to learn more about him, and things kind of force themselves upon him to make him come out of his shell. There's this raggedy cat that keeps following him around that he finally kind of adopts. There's an immigrant family that kind of helps him come out of his shell. And, I'm not going to spoil it because I saw this film knowing absolutely nothing about it and was really intensely shocked and intrigued when I found out what it was really about. But long story short, it's almost, I kind of think of it almost like It's a Wonderful Life. It's this person who really feels like his life has no meaning and there's no purpose to it. And then through the intervention of the people around him and God to a certain extent, he finds meaning and he finds his life does matter. And a lot of things he thought were one way are actually another way. And it's just this really beautiful affirmation of the purpose of everyone, that even if you have a lot of trauma or trial in your life can have meaning if you love those around you and you give to those around you. And there were a few little things that kind of annoyed me about it, but overall it was just a really beautiful affirmation. And again, Tom Hanks is again one of the great actors of our time, and so it was always good to see him chew on a really meaty role. But yeah, so A Man Called Otto.
Yeah, I like that one too. My number six was Nefarious.
Ooh.
Um, it's, I mean, what's really funny was talking to my mom about this movie after she saw it,
Hmm.
because she's like, you know, 10 minutes of talking to this guy, realizing he's believing what he's saying, you know,
Hmm.
sign him off, send him
Right,
back,
right, right.
right? Sign him off, say, he, but then there would be no movie,
Right.
right? So, but Nefarious, is this uh, psychologist talking to a prisoner who's trying to, who's a lawyer's trying to plead that he's, he's mentally ill, so he can't be executed. Um, but then he's claiming he's possessed, and so it's just this conversation between this guy and the psychologist, and it's just really compelling. You get really sucked into this conversation, and it uh, it's a really tight screenplay, which is really important in a movie like this.
Hmm.
Um, and I liked the theming of it. Um, it it's I've seen a lot of movies about demons and possessions
The
and
Pope's Exorcist.
monsters and yeah. And this one I feel like got the closest theologically to kind of the experience of somebody who is possessed, if that makes sense. It still wasn't, a perfect representation of it, but I feel like as far as what's actually going on inside of somebody when they're fighting evil, I felt like this got the closest to that as opposed to even the Pope's Exorcist. Even though that did a good job too, but I feel like this kind of because it's hard to do a good uh, possession film because most of it is internal. Most of it is an internal struggle. Um, but The Exorcist kind of was able to bring a lot of that to the external. It's my understanding they took a lot of liberties with the
Right, yeah,
physical stuff that happened to this family in The Exorcist.
right.
But that's a good way to kind of represent physically, cinematically represent the internal struggle. And I thought Nefarious did a really good job with that internal struggle. And yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, I loved it too. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but yeah, it's really good. All right, so number five, I had Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. So this is an adaptation of the classic Judy Blume novel of a young woman. I don't know her exact age, I think it's 13, who is recently moved, is going to a new school, trying to make friends. She also comes from an interfaith family. Her mother came from kind of a conservative evangelical Christian family. Her father comes from kind of a secular Jewish family, and she's facing puberty. So, she's meeting new friends, all of whom are kind of having these new feelings. And so there's a lot of discussion about when they're going to get their period and how big their bra size is and that sort of thing. And it's one of the most honest, kind of upfront takes of young womanhood and trying to, figure out these new experiences and trying to figure out what it means to be a woman. It's interspliced with her conversations with God. She kind of keeps this journal and she talks to God about her experiences. And part of this, because she comes from an interfaith family, she believes in God, but she doesn't really know what she believes about God. So it's really cool to kind of see her try to figure this out, both her own sense of bodily awareness, but then trying to figure out who God is. And then you also see the struggle the parents have, where the mom feels kind of embarrassed by her family, but the dad's also not especially religious. But the daughter is actually, despite them, seems like she is really religious, so she doesn't really know. And, her grandparents really like the fact that she's religious. So the dad's mom wants to take her to the synagogue and wants to have a bat mitzvah. The mom's parents want her to get baptized. And again, unfortunately, because her parents aren't really gung ho about either of this, she doesn't really have a good guidance. And she's kind of caught in this middle. It was funny. It was sad. It was poignant. It felt very, very honest. Now, obviously, I've gone through the adolescent phase of a man and the awkwardness and difficulties involved with that. I imagine having that as a woman is in some ways similar, in some ways very different. It's one of my biggest fears to have my own daughters go through this process. I will leave that largely up to my wife to handle because I am just very icky about the whole thing. And I'm sure she'll do a much better job than I ever would. But it was really insightful. It was well written. It was extremely well acted, especially the main actress. She was the young girl in the Ant-Man movies, and she just really did this was her first big role, and she knocked it out of the park. She did a great job.
Yeah, she did a wonderful job. And speaking as a woman, it was very accurate to adolescent womanhood. Um, yeah, it was a good movie.
All right, was your number five?
My number five was Tetris on
Ah,
Apple
yes.
Plus, about kind of the battle for the rights to Tetris. And like it's one of those like based on a true story, but not kind of a things like um, but it was just the way it was edited and the back and forth, the constant back and forth among the characters, and the high stakes of like if we don't get this deal, we're done for. And like the Game Boy, like um, I don't know, it was kind of a fun take on a classic heist kind of a movie. The wheel and dealing kind of a thing, but it was kind of a fun theme, right? Video games and uh, yeah, I thought it was really well edited. I liked the dynamics between among the different all three of the different countries, Russia,
Right.
Japan, and America, kind of seeing the dynamics and how they work with all of that, and it was just a really good movie.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was very tense.
Yeah,
Like you always felt on the edge of your seat. You always wanted him to succeed. I didn't realize there was so much involved in like copyright law. It was kind of funny to see like this whole spy espionage intrigue film with backstabbing over the rights of Tetris. I mean, it's just you say it out loud. It sounds like a weird topic, but yeah, it was a very fun movie. I really enjoyed it too. All right, number four. So number four is Mother Teresa and Me. This was another kind of really small film. It was just on the a blip on the radar really fast, but it was the best movie I've seen, and I've seen like four now, about Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And what's interesting is that of all the films I've seen, it's the only one that's not like a straight biography. So we do learn a lot about Mother Teresa's life, but as the name implies, it's done kind of through the eyes of someone else. So it's about this. It takes place in the current day, so 2023, where you have this 20-something musician who is, an up and coming musician. She's Indian by ethnicity. She has a boyfriend, and she finds out she's pregnant, and she's kind of dealing with the decision to whether to have the baby or have an abortion. Her boyfriend kind of pushes her to have an abortion, but she doesn't really know, and so she decides to go back to India to spend some time with her aunt to kind of just
in Calcutta.
process in Calcutta to process all this. And while she's there, her aunt basically tells her, okay, you can stay with me, but I volunteer at the Missionary of Charities, hospital here, and you're going to come and work with me. So she takes some time actually working with the people that Mother Teresa works with. And in the process, you learn about Mother Teresa's life. And we see these kind of flashbacks where, of course, we get this classic story where Mother Teresa starts out as a member of the Sisters of Loreto, as a teacher, and then she has her, trip to Darjeeling, that very famous train ride where she feels the call within a call, and then she starts her order, and she has her difficulties with God, and the dark night of the soul that lasts for decades. Um, and so it's through the eyes of this younger person, kind of learning about all of this, and then it ends with something I dare not spoil, but there is a connection between the two, a very profound connection between St. Teresa of Calcutta and this young woman, that, is going to affect her decision on what to do about this baby, but also just about her life in general. And I think this is a really good way to talk about the life of a saint. It's fine to do a straight biography, to talk about their events, but the reason God has saints is so that they can do good in the world, that they can save souls, which is what all of us are called to do. And so you see how even decades after her death, Mother Teresa has this effect on this young woman. and is out there saving her soul, saving the soul of her unborn child, saving the soul of her aunt, going out there just doing good for the people around her. And it's such a beautiful story, just beautifully told. Just the screenplay was one of the best of the year. Really well acted. And again, there are good Mother Teresa movies. I don't want to knock some of the other films I've seen, but this is easily the best. And it was this little gem that came out of nowhere, and I really loved it.
Yeah, it's definitely the best Mother Teresa movie I've ever seen, and I really enjoyed the movie. Um, it was. Um, One thing I found interesting about it was I know that the character, she kept bringing up like Mother Teresa was great, but why did she talk like this about abortion? She was really struggling with it, and a lot of people like miss that was anytime Mother Teresa spoke to the West, she talked about abortion.
Right.
And so I really liked, and no other movie has done this, like you said, but I really liked that they really focused on that because, this is the only area where she's a divisive person, right? Where people are, she embarrassed the Clintons when she was at the prayer breakfast. And but it really she was genuinely searching for the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciated that it wasn't just a flippant, oh whatever kind of
Right.
thing, but she was genuinely trying to understand Mother Teresa. And yeah, like you're right, like seeing, like telling the story of a saint through their impact in the world today is a actually unique way to even tell the story of saints, and probably one that filmmakers should be considering going forward.
Yeah.
My number four, however, uh, was the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Very different movie.
A very different movie.
But very good.
But I thought the animation was beautiful. The kids loved it, and it's just such a fun movie. But it still has like the whole, the underdog story, and like it's classic Mario in a movie form, but with fancy graphics. And I don't know, I really liked that, and it's one of those movies that the more I watched it, the more I appreciated it. There's so many like little things to catch, and everything that Chris Pratt touches turns to gold. So
It's true. Next, we
um,
got the Garfield movie coming up.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's gonna be so. Oh, so I'm really excited actually.
Yeah.
To see Chris
Yeah,
Pratt
this
as
was on
Garfield.
my short list too. I mean, there's no film our kids like better than this film. They've
Yeah.
watched it dozens and dozens of times. I mean, so it came out in April. The first trailers for it dropped in October, and our oldest son would not stop talking about this movie for months. Months from like October to April. He just would keep talking about this movie. I mean, he loves Mario. He like it's probably his favorite video game franchise, and he just yeah, like, and it was really good. I mean, besides the fact that kids enjoyed it, it was well put together, it honored the story, and it was fun. It was, yeah, it was a really good film.
Yeah, it's just refreshing to just see a fun kids movie.
Yep. All right, speaking of kids movies, my number three was Leo. This is another one that kind of came out of nowhere for me. I was listening to a podcast that Conan O'Brien was doing, and he had a guest on named Robert Schmiegel, who is the creator of the character Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, one of my favorite kind of comedy bits growing up in high school and college. And he mentioned that he had made this animated film that was on Netflix. And I was like, I never heard of this. I should probably go watch it. It's written and directed by the guy who did Triumph, but it's a kids movie and it's a musical. This is really weird. So I saw it and wow, I was just blown away. First of all, it's great to see an animated masterpiece that's not from DreamWorks or Disney. That's one of these like smaller companies that doesn't get a lot of buzz. It's
Was
a
it Skydance?
no, it was something completely random. I don't even remember the name. I mean, it was produced by Netflix, which isn't random, but it was I forget the name. It's the same
Well,
company that
it
did
is.
Hotel Transylvania.
Well, that's Adam Sandler's company.
Right. It was Happy Madison.
Happy
That's what it's
Madison,
called.
yeah.
But yeah, so again, as we mentioned, it's Sandler's team. So Adam Sandler plays the voice of Leo, who's a lizard who's a class pet basically. And the basic plot is he can talk to humans and he like helps kids with their problems, so he's like a therapist pet basically. And but it's really funny and it's about growing up. It's about this class of kids that doesn't know each other, but then they are try to make friends and they try to fit in and Leo helps them with this. It's really hilarious. Just the writing is spectacular. You have Adam Sandler playing Leo the Lizard, and then you have Bill Burr playing the turtle Squirtle, and it's just hilarious. And again, it's one of my favorite comedy writers of all time, Robert Schmiegel, and his first kind of big solo project that he wrote and directed. The songs are great, the lessons are great, the animation's really fun, the characters are wonderful. Just one of the great kid films I've seen really in the last 5 years. Um, Definitely recommend it if you have kids, and adults will enjoy it too.
Yeah, it certainly has a lot more heart than Mario Brothers. But
I mean, it has more heart, but less animation money. We'll just
yeah,
say it like that.
um,
Okay.
yeah, I liked Leo too. I don't know. It was weird. Like it didn't. You're like seeing it the second time with the kids. I liked it better than the first time. I don't know. Something didn't. It had a lot of heart, but there was something like I think for me what it was I didn't think the music worked except for the one song.
The one about
When I
growing
was
up
yeah
when I was 10.
when I was
That was a really
10.
good song.
That's a really good. But the rest of the songs felt forced. It didn't feel like it flowed well. I think that's why
Okay.
it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. My number three was A Man Called Otto, and man, I told you my struggle about putting it on the list because like
Mhm.
it's such an amazing movie until like that weird part with the kid and the dad, and it's like, why are you ruining a nearly perfect movie? And I almost wanted to not put it on the list just because of
Now,
that.
you read the book, right?
I did,
So
yeah.
yeah, she read the book and I didn't read the book. So you have that to and wasn't like the cat different too?
Yeah, I read the book, and then when I saw the movie, I was very disappointed in the cat. The cat was not mangy enough.
Was it mangy
Was
enough?
not a mangy enough cat. Why was its tail still intact?
Wait, it didn't have a tail in the book?
Like if its tail was gone.
Ew. Yeah, no, I would have it do a whole tail. I don't want to see a half-tailed cat.
um, but other than that, it was very faithful to the book, and was such a heart wrenching movie. And I don't think I've ever seen Tom Hanks in a role that he just doesn't nail. Um, and it was the same thing with this movie. He just nailed the performance, and it's a well written movie, except for that one weird thing. And I told you, I was like, man, I almost just don't want to put it on the list because it's a near perfect movie, but then they spoil it, and I'd almost like rather. What was the movie I knocked off of here? It was like um oh, Air.
Air.
Air. Yeah, I
Air,
was
the
like, that's such a
Phil
good
Knight
movie,
movie.
but
That was
but
good.
I knocked Air off for this movie, but I'm like, I almost want to keep Air on instead because Air is at least consistent. It's like goodness, you know. It's not great, but it also doesn't have any moments that are just like absolute garbage like this movie. And it's just I'm like, the struggle is real, people.
Yeah. Top 10
Um,
lists are like that.
yeah. But I went ahead and put it on the list because Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks is great,
Yeah.
except for his role in Elvis. That was mostly just because the accent was weird. But anyway,
Still nailed it.
still now. All right. So now we're up to the top two. So my number two was a film I just saw last week.
Now, I want to just note to the listeners here that your top two, your number two, does not appear anywhere on my list for
That's
top
true.
10, and
That's
my
true.
number two doesn't appear on your list at all.
That is also true.
So things are getting spicy, people.
Okay. All right. So my number two was Wonka, the prequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, based on the Roald Dahl novel. The one adjective that I think just described this film from beginning to end is just delightful. It's wondrous. It's fun. It's kind of the
Whimsical.
best of British whimsy. So think like Mary Poppins, think like Paddington. Um, so like for example, Wonka has this hat that he takes random objects out of, like Mary Poppins' bag, and no one questions it. Like the whole film, he'll be like, "Oh, it's tea time," and he'll take off his hat and he'll take out a pot of tea from his hat, fully, hot, and tea bags, and people start drinking tea, and no one bothers to question his magical hat. Um, it's a musical, and the songs are great. It's got a ton of heart. I love how snidely whiplashy the villains are. They're just really fun and silly. And
Slughorn is
it
fabulous.
feels like a more optimistic version of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, like when he was young and ambitious, and before he got a little bit jaded because people were stealing his secrets. And Timothy Chalamet is fantastic. Mr. Bean is in it, Rowan Atkinson. I mean, it's just so much fun. And it's full of chocolate just constantly. And I just loved it. I had a smile on my face like the entire movie. And it never left. And the kids really liked it. And yeah, it was just a really entertaining film. The art direction was spectacular,
Yeah,
the
it was.
costumes, everything about it was just expertly crafted. And I just really loved it.
Yeah. Cause see, it's weird. Like I like the movie a lot. Maybe I just need to see it again. Um, and I've been listening to the soundtrack. But it reminded me of The Greatest Showman,
Mm,
which was
yeah.
just such a fantastic movie,
Hmm.
and the music was wonderful. And I think the reason I don't really like Wonka all that much is because it didn't quite hit that bar that Greatest Showman hit. Like even with the music,
Hmm.
um, there's some of the, it's like again with the consistency. It's like some of the music is really good, but then some of it, it's like doesn't the lyrics don't work real well. And I don't know. Because I it's weird. It's I liked again. I think we said this earlier in the podcast that like there weren't a lot of movies that just like
Right.
had that spark that
There are a
that
lot of
that
good movies, but not like super great ones.
yeah. And so I think it's not even so much that Wonka is not a good movie. I think it's just it. I'm comparing it to something that's like way better than
Right.
it,
My
and
opinion would be the music in Greater Showman is better, but I liked Wonka more. Just I enjoyed it more. It
yeah, I
was
guess I
more
can see that.
fun. I liked Willy Wonka better than I liked P.T. Barnum.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
I don't know. I mean, Great Showman is a great movie. I recommend
Yeah,
it too.
yeah, but I like Slughorn. He's probably my favorite character. Slughorn and the police chief are great. My number two, however, was The Sound of Freedom. It was another one that was pretty early in the year.
Yeah, this is spring sometime, I think.
Um, but yeah, it's such a gut wrenching story, and Jim Caviezel was a fantastic actor. And then, like, listening to the interview with the director, this was the little movie that could. Nobody wanted to touch it, much like Lady Ballers. Um, but it. A lot of, including yourself, didn't like the suffering,
Hmm.
and obviously, I didn't like the suffering either. but you can't have Easter Sunday without Good Friday. And uh, so I'm gonna let you all know right away that there is a happy ending in The Sound of Freedom. Okay, everyone ends up being okay. Um, but it's such a intense struggle to get there, and it was just so well done. It again, with a lot of the movies on my list, it does a really good job with the stakes and the suspense and the oh man, yeah, it's and again, Jim Caviezel's character is just very compelling, and that struggle that he goes through, and his wife is supportive, and um, it's you've seen a movie like The Sound of Freedom. You makes you wonder, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm not out there saving children like this guy is. But I'm taking care of my
Well,
own,
what
so
you
that's
had to deal with a lot today with kids, so you're
But
just saving different kids.
yeah, so you have to remind yourself that we all have our own callings. But I'm thankful to God for people. What's the guy's name?
Tim Ballard.
Tim Ballard. Yeah, I'm thankful to guys like Tim Ballard who are the real heroes of the world.
So I really liked this film too. It was on my short list. It didn't make the top 10. But I did enjoy. I thought it was an incredibly well-made film. So it was directed by Alejandro Monteverde.
Alejandro Gomez Monteverde.
Right. Who many Catholics will know as the writer director of Bella, which was kind of one of these films that came out in the late 2000s, like 2007, 2008, along with October Baby, that were very pro life, but very mediocre in quality.
I remember watching Bella and being like, why do people like this movie?
Yeah, it was just very middle of the road. But this is a great example of someone who started out. I mean, it was his first effort. This is his third film, and boy, he's really matured as a director. It was a tight film, very action heavy, very on the edge of your seat. I mean, certainly, easily, just purely from a director style, he really knocked out of the park. Again, I think the main reason it's not higher on the list is for me, it was just really, really hard. I don't do well with movies where kids get hurt or in trouble or in danger. It's really tough for me. So obviously, I knew going in the subject matter was going to be really difficult. But that being said, I mean, they made a very well made, taught action, and in the end, positive film about child sex trafficking. And they did it in a PG-13 movie, which is pretty impressive to be both honest, but also not graphic or over stimulating or just um it was a difficult film for me to watch, but I recognized it was very good quality. The acting was very good. Jim Caviezel did a great job. So yeah, no, it is a good movie, just didn't make the top 10. All right, so we're down to our best film of the year. Now, as we've talked about several times, all of these films I've talked about, I recommend go see them, but none of them I would consider like masterpieces, like films I'll return to again and again and again, except for number one. Number one was the only film that I felt really kind of stood out as doing something different in the history of cinema and hopefully will continue on a pattern. Okay. Kind of like God's Not Dead in 2015, that kind of jump started the Christian independent movement or something like that. So the film, which Violet always mentioned, I think it was your sixth choice, was Nefarious. Um, so the Exorcist narrative has obviously been around a really long time. The most famous version is the 1970 Exorcist movie. But this is the best film I've seen that really looks at the nature of demonology, how demons function, how sin functions. It's not a straight lace Exorcist film. There's no priests, really, except for one little scene. But basically, well, that was kind of the point. Um, But basically, it's about, again, kind of like Freud's Last Sessions. It's a 2 hour conversation between a possessed person and the psychologist who's trying to determine whether he's sane, insane, or possessed. Of course, he doesn't really believe in Satan, so that's not really an option for him. But the reason I loved it was really just insightful to how demons kind of function and what demons are really out there to do. Um, and the one book I kept thinking about the whole time I was watching it was the Screw Tape Letters. This was probably the best fictional portrayal of demonology apart from the Screw Tape Letters, which is, of course, kind of the classic example. And it shows that evil is very real, evil is very insidious, evil delights in evil. It's not kind of a snidely whiplash cartoonish evil. You feel really disturbed and dark when you're watching the film. You see the joy the demon takes when someone is murdered and how excited he is over someone committing mortal sin. And it's really disturbing, but that's the point. I the only criticism I would have is it has a very soft ending that I'm still not
Yeah.
entirely sure what they were trying to do with the ending. But up until then, it doesn't have a wrong note, a wrong edit. The acting is incredible. The writing is just so insightful and so fantastic. Only the final like little scene doesn't really make a lot of sense, but still I don't think it hurts the film too much overall. I was just enthralled from beginning to end and really impressed. And you already talked about it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. That's a great movie.
hmm
Do you think you will use it in your classroom at all?
Possibly. I have probably not just because I teach freshmen.
Oh, that's a good point.
I use Friends on the Other Side from
Princess
Princess
and
and
the
the
Frog.
Frog, which does the job actually pretty good. Um, and I do Paranormal Witness. If I was teaching morality, which I sometimes do for seniors, this might be something I use. Yeah.
So my number one, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it was definitely my favorite movie this year. Just the, as you already described, just the depths that the story went to, and like we've been with these characters for so long, and like
Almost a decade now, 2014.
yeah, so yeah, almost so 9 years, and um, I it's interesting because like we're losing our shared um culture of just having Christianity in the background, even of like people who aren't Christian being familiar with Christianity, and uh, if you look at the hero's journey, which is the core of all great stories, that's really like Christ's journey, right?
Mm.
Um, so it was really refreshing uh, to go back to just this classic, like redemptive Christian story and like good versus evil. Um, and um, I looked it up, and the director, I can't really see if he's Christian now, but he grew up in an Irish Catholic family, so he has that language
hmm
of redemption and suffering, and it was just such a roller coaster. Um, but it was also a satisfying movie, and the characters, of course, are just so fantastic. Um, I just love that movie, and talking about it is making me realize that I've only seen it once this year, and
So gotta see it again.
that is a scandal. I don't know why I haven't seen it again, and we need to watch it again.
Okay, sounds good.
A lot of these movies I want to watch again. I know I've seen Lady Ballers twice, but man, movie is funny. Maybe we'll
Lady
watch it
Balls is a
again.
good movie to have in the background.
Yeah, I don't necessarily
Same
need to
with
sit down
Wonka,
and
same
watch it
with
again.
Leo.
I
A
know
lot of
he's
these.
want to watch Wonka again. He keeps
Yeah.
like as soon as like the day after we saw it, he was like, "When's it gonna come out on streaming?"
Yeah.
I'm like,
It
"Oh,
will
what?"
eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Um.
last little postscript, just to kind of wish you all well. We're each going to say three movies we didn't get to see, but we really want to. We only have a limited amount of time, energy, resources, money, especially time, more than anything else.
I know.
Um,
And now that our youngest is at that age when we just can't take him to the
yeah, you
theater
can't
on
take
date
them in the
nights
theater. You're
anymore.
right. It's really rough. So the three films that I did not see, which I still plan to see at some point, the first is Oppenheimer.
Oh, that's mine
I
too.
yeah, I love Christopher Nolan. He's fantastic in everything he does, and it was a really interesting story. I'm really sad. I did see Barbie, which didn't show up on the list. There are things I thought were really stupid, but there were things I really loved about it. So Barbie was actually fine. I enjoyed it. But
Barbie's a fun movie.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I never saw Oppenheimer. Really wanted to see it. There was a film from Angel Studios, which made Sound of Freedom, called The Shift, which was, I haven't even seen the trailer for it, but I was told was kind of a modern retelling of the Book of Job, uh, which is really cool because I love that story. I love teaching that story. And then the third one was American Fiction. This is something I saw the trailer for relatively recently in the last few weeks. It stars Jeffrey Wright, who is from Westworld, who's really a great actor, who's basically is a writer who's down on his luck, and he's an African American writer, but he speaks in a style that's very kind of commonplace American English, and his publicists and publishers aren't really interested in that. So, as kind of a joke, he writes a book in kind of stereotypical African American slang and with motifs, and kind of throws his producer basically saying, well, if this is the trash you want, then here it is. And they end up loving it and they want to publish it. And he's like, I don't want to write this, but they're like, this is what we want to write. And so it's got this interesting dynamic and dialogue about what a true voice is. And it also deals with like kind of a lot of the political language and landscape that's going on today. And I don't know, it was really interesting. I love Jeffrey Wright, so I'd be interested to see their take on
Well, and it sounded like it got really meta when the New York Times was like praising this movie, like making
that.
fun of them.
Well, yeah, like I said, I haven't seen the film, so I don't really know where it goes, but I want to find out.
Yeah, those all sound interesting, but I also wanted to see A Haunting in Venice. I heard that was really good, and it's if you couldn't tell by my list, it's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
I also wanted to see The Blind. I saw Peter's interview with Corey and Willie Robinson, and they talked about the movie and about his parents, and it just sounded like a really compelling story, and like one of those stories that just needs to get out there more. You know, that story of redemption and struggle, and because like having watched Duck Dynasty, I would have never guessed where the origins of that family, of that couple, what kind of some of their early years were like, and so I would be really excited to see the movie, to kind of learn more about them, and yeah, just support more of these smaller uh, Christian movies.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening. That was our best of 2023. We hope you had a fantastic year. We wish God's blessings upon all of you and your families. And from our family to yours, have a happy new year. Blessed feast of the presentation, and we'll see you later. Bye.
And make sure you comment and send us your favorite movies of this year, and we'll talk about them in the next podcast. I believe you can comment on the episode here, or you can email thedangeroussaint@gmail.com,
Yep.
and we'll kind of read some of your favorites.
Okay. Take care.